about troubleshooting. The troubleshooting steps are covered on page 3 of the attached document. So when it comes to troubleshooting one of these bleach flow meter systems, there are really 4 things in particular that we need to pay attention to. There is testing the voltage coming off your power supply to make sure we're actually getting 24 volts DC. There's testing the display to make sure either the display is not blank and that the display is seeing the pulse inputs generated by the flow meter. And then there's also testing the pulse output from the flow meter to make sure that you're getting a proper pulse. So we'll now go over each of those individually, and I'll tell you how to do the troubleshooting. So your first step is going to be testing the power supply, the 24 volt DC power supply. So I have a voltmeter here. It's set on DC voltage. So I simply want to take my leads coming off the voltmeter. I'm going to turn my display down now. And I want to go on to terminals 1 and 2, which is where my power supply lands. Whenever I do that, I should get somewhere between 24 and 30 volts DC. And if you look on the voltmeter, we're measuring 28.5 volts DC. So that assures me that I'm getting the proper voltage coming off my voltmeter, and there's nothing wrong with the power supply. The second thing we're going to do is I'm going to reset my totalizer here. You can use a piece of wire, or you can use a paper clip for this. But basically, we want to take a piece of wire or a paper clip. Again, I'm going to turn my display down, and across terminals 2 and 15, which is where the red wire and the shield wire from my flow meter connect, I want to put this wire on one of the terminals and just tap on that other terminal a few times. Once I do that, if I lift my display back up, I should see some amount of totalization there. So in this case, I see 0.6 gallons. What we're doing there is we're simulating a pulse from the flow meter by tapping this wire across those 2 terminals. If my flow meter is not reading a value when I do that, that means this display is bad and the display needs to be replaced. So again, that checks out, not a problem. Hit the down arrow, and we have now reset our totalizer. So the next step would be to take my flow meter and actually give the paddle a spin. So when I do that, just when you do this, you'll be out of the fill station. You'll need to shut all your valves off, isolate flow, stop flow in the lines, and then you remove this flow meter from your T-fitting. When you do that, you might have some excess bleach come up out of the T if you haven't properly drained your line, or if you drain your line first, then you won't have that issue. Now you might be pulling against a vacuum if you've drained your line, so it might be a little bit difficult to pull the flow meter out. But once you get it out, you simply let me connect this to 15 where it should be. Now, if I give the flow meter a spin with my finger, you should see the totalization come up on the display. So what you've done here is you've now tested that this flow meter is providing a pulse output. We've also tested that the display is receiving that pulse input, so we know both of those components work. Now, most of the pool stores that I have been to, we have the flow meter out in the field. It comes with about 20 foot of cable. It gets wired to a junction box, and then the junction box has a wire run that goes all the way into the store and connects into the display. 2 very important things to point out about that junction box. Coming off this flow meter, we have a red, a black, and a shield. You should always use the same 3 colors coming out of your junction box going back into the store, so at the display we're landing a red, a black, and a shield. You should also properly splice the connections at the junction box in the field to keep water out of your wires. That way the wiring doesn't go bad. Many times the wires in the field are different colors and the splice is not done properly. So the final thing that we want to check, if I disconnect my lead for the red wire, we want to check. Say on the last step when we spun the paddle wheel with our finger, we were not seeing pulses on here. that doesn't tell me if the issue is in my paddle wheel or if the issue is in my wiring. So if we want to confirm that the paddle wheel is good, we need to go out to the junction box where the wires are connected, lift off my red lead, and then I take my voltmeter, I put one lead in the terminal where the red came out of, and then I take my other lead and I put it on the red wire coming off the paddle wheel. When you do that, you should see 0 volts. And if I give the flow meter a spin, every time a paddle passes by the sensor body, you will see that voltage spike up. So that is telling me that my paddle wheel is actually giving me an output. So if I do all these steps, my paddle wheel is giving me an output, my display is seeing the input, but when I have everything wired back up and I spin the paddle, my display is not seeing it. That means my wiring is bad and that wiring needs to be replaced. All right, so that's everything I wanted to cover today. We've talked about proper calibration, we've discussed the individual components of the flow meter system, and we've talked about how to do troubleshooting. If you have any additional questions or need support, feel free to call us at 1-800-860-4499 and ask for the applications department. I appreciate your time and have a great day.